My name is Beryl Clark, and I'm a volunteer. And we are delighted to have you here with us for the 14th Annual Humanities Montana Festival of the Book. And first up, we have Brandon R. Schrand. He is the author of Works Cited, An Alphabetical Odyssey of Mayhem and Misbehavior, and The Enders Hotel, a Memoir, which was the 2007 River Teeth Literary Nonfiction Prize winner, a 2008 School Library Journal Best Adult Books for High School Students Selection, a 2008 Idaho Book Award Honorable Mention winner, and a 2008 Barnes & Noble Discover Great New Writers Selection. His work has appeared or is forthcoming in the Dallas Morning News, the Ute Reader, Tin House, Shenandoah, the Missouri Review, Columbia, Colorado Review, Green Mountains Review, River Teeth, Ecotone, Isotope, and numerous other publications. He has won the 2006 Willard R. Espy Award, Shenandoah's 2008 Carter Prize, the Pushcart Prize, 4 Pushcart Prize special mentions, and has had notable essays in the Best American Essays 2007, 2008, and 2009. He lives in Moscow, Idaho, with his wife and 2 children, where he teaches in the MFA program in creative writing at the University of Idaho. We are delighted to have Brandon Schrand back at the festival. Please help welcome me in welcoming Brandon Schrand.
Thanks, Beryl, for that introduction, and thank you all for coming. It's a pleasure to be here and to be back. I'm going to read a little bit. Am I projecting okay? Okay, good. I'm going to read a little bit from my new book, Works Cited, An Alphabetical Odyssey of Mayhem and Misbehavior, which is a second memoir. As the title suggests, it's written in a works cited format. You remember having to do those works cited papers on, the bibliography. And the idea came to me to write an essay that was like that, that would be a bibliography to an absent text or a bibliography to my life. And then I thought of conceiving that and becoming a book. So that's what we've got here. So it doesn't move chronologically, which will just leave you confused and angry at me by the time I'm done reading. And that's fine. I'm totally okay with that. So I'm just going to read the first few bits of this book. Abby Edward, Desert Solitaire, A Season in the Wilderness, New York, Ballantine, 1971. Sometimes I imagine the scene from above, as if camera shot from a helicopter. The great wash of Arizona desert, that thread of leaden highway, blots of creosote, greasewood, and arroyo, and there, near the road, the flashing lights, blues and reds, the squad cars. Zoom in and you can see 3 young men, boys really, handcuffed. Zoom in closer and you see their faces. The one in the middle, the thin one, that's me. It's April 1992, and I'm a 19-year-old kid who, along with 2 of his fraternity brothers, have just been popped for a 1/4 ounce of weed. It's not that big of a deal. It's not like we were these badass drug runners or anything. We were just 3 fraternity boys who wanted to go for a drive and smoke a little pot and listen to the Doors, and who happened to be speeding in the wrong place at the wrong time. We had fallen into a dragnet, a 9-car police roadblock, a random screen they throw down because evidently there is an occasional drug thug who runs his junk up and down these ghosted desert roads. So our bust was small time, no big whoop. Unless, of course, you happen to be just inside the Arizona state border, as we were, and learn that possession of marijuana is a felony offense. Then it's kind of a big whoop. As I stand there in the feet spread out, hands up, you're so going to prison pose, hindsight storms my mind. Had I not agreed to join the joyride excursion from our small college in the Red Rock Desert of southern Utah to Pipe Spring National Monument, had I not blown off my classes as I always did, along with the assigned reading for my creative writing class, in this case, Ed Abbey's Desert Solitaire, I wouldn't be here. But I am, and there's nothing I can do to change it, so I stay quiet, too freaked out to say anything. But my friend, the one who was driving, is running his mouth. You probably get off busting people, don't you? He says to the cop, cuffing him. Only when I bust people like you, he says. One of the police radios squawks and a desert gust lifts some dust and blows it into the road. A car passes and a little girl stares at me. We make eye contact. Her face a grainy, haunting film still. She's maybe 5 and I can only imagine what she must be thinking. She's thinking, bad guy. Soon we're in the car, they're taking us in. The entire episode is surreal, and I can't quite process it because 1, I'm stoned, and 2, I'm a scared shitless boy flung into the sudden country of men and consequence. Things become more surreal as the squad car rolls into a sandy parking lot outside of a courthouse/mobile home in Moccasin, Arizona. I'm not making this up, it was a trailer house. Trailer courthouse. Inside, we're handcuffed to metal folding chairs in the living room. Cheap cream draperies hang down to the gray shag carpet, and wood paneling darkens the room. The judge, who is evidently also a farmer, stomps in through the kitchen, removes his rubber irrigation boots, and sits before us at a card table in his tube socks. He's a paunchy man with thinning gray hair. An American flag and an Arizona state flag flank the rickety table. He shoves his glasses up the bridge of his nose and picks through some papers on the table before him. "Where'd you boys drive in from?" he asks, without looking at us. "Cedar City," my friend says miserably. "We're students there," I say, "at SUU. This detail seems important to me, a detail that might suggest a different story, and yet, once I start speaking, my voice wanders apologetically. "My grandson goes there," he says, and looks up. He tells us his grandson's name, and we're shocked and relieved because we actually know him, because he's actually in our fraternity, and it's a small and occasionally coincidental world, and we feel the weight lift a little. "Possession of marijuana in the state of Arizona is a felony offense." He looks at us. It's unclear if it's a statement or a question, and because we're stoned and under arrest, we just look at him blank-faced and nod. He takes his glasses off, pockets them, and says, "Listen, in your case, I'm willing to drop it to a Class B misdemeanor." Then he adds some stiff lines about how if he ever sees us again, he will throw the book at us and all the rest. And because we're boys, scared and stoned, we spew forth with all kinds of bobble-headed assurances the whole "we sure have learned our lessons" spiel. In the end, we are fined $400 apiece and released on our own recognizance. The drive home is long and sober. We speak very little, save some urgent promises that we will never, under any fucking circumstances, tell anyone, and that includes girlfriends, yo, what happened. What happened in Moccasin stays the fucking Moccasin. Word. They emailed me when they read this, and they're like, "Dude, you weren't supposed to tell me. You wrote it in a book." Yeah. So much for promises. That previous fall, I had fled my hometown of Soda Springs, Idaho, for Southern Utah University. Its beautiful country and its beauty made attending class difficult. Plunked down the sagebrush-born cow shit on his shoes, first-generation college kid in beautiful country, inhabited by beautiful girls, and be amazed that he ditches his classes. He doesn't know his ass from a hole in the sky because he is a 19-year-old boy who has confused the wondrous burdens of independence for manhood, or something like it. He hasn't read Desert Solitaire, and as a partial result, he'll fail the class. But instead of selling the book back like his classmates, he keeps it. He keeps it because he thinks he'll read it one day, and indeed he will. He hangs on to it too because verdicts are falling like hammers from a dark sky. Academic transcript as verdict, criminal record as verdict, each of them adding up to a story of a man he never dreamed of becoming. Keep the books, hold on to the good stories. It is easy now to see how frantic my desert isolations were and how the dope and the booze and the girls helped to assuage the pains of the boy who wasn't yet man enough to name them. Okay, so I'm just going to read kind of a next bit. This jumps back into time to when I'm a boy. Brindley, Bertrand R., The Mad Scientist Club, New York, Scholastic, 1965. When I was 11 and in that sunset year of childhood when it took actual concentration to discern the diaphanous line between daydreams and reality, when the stories I read so fully colored my day-to-day loafing in rural Idaho that I seldom knew where the page ended and the world began, I picked up a particular book about a gang of goofy kids whose lives I wanted to be my own so badly that it left me aching in that joyous way books often leave us, high yet abandoned somehow. That feeling when you have it is tactile and intoxicating. It is like love or victory or surrender. Set in the nostalgic and quaint town of Mammoth Falls, the Mad Scientist Club centers on a group of boy geniuses whose singular occupation was to hatch harebrained schemes to save their town or themselves from one kind of danger or another. Led by Jeff Crocker and the bespectacled Henry Mulligan, the main brain, the club met daily in their headquarters, which was outfitted in the loft of Jeff Crocker's barn. They had an in-house laboratory complete with microscopes and vials of solutions and compounds. They had telescopes, transmitters, toolboxes, and plenty of books, and endless days to fill. It was a world that to me felt actual, a realm whose cinematic stories stamped my imagination, and I never wanted it to end. So I formed my own Mad Scientist Club. I enlisted 5 of the smartest kids in my school. I secured a workspace in the basement of the old hotel and cafe my family owned. I bought a telescope, I redeemed a shoebox filled with hundreds of my grandmother's cigarette coupons. She smoked Bel Airs, and you'd get a little coupon, and then they would send you a catalog, and I'm like, smoke more, I've got to get this telescope. She's like, I can only smoke so many in a day, you know? And I'm horrified by that now. I'm just like, oh my God, what the hell was I doing? Yeah. I gathered tools, rope, pocket knives, drafting paper, pencils, protractors, a Commodore VIC-20, walkie-talkies, everything. We were in business. I called the meeting to order in the dank recesses of our basement, explained my intentions, my conceptions of what would surely be summer after summer of endless adventure. But the first meeting seemed forced and stilted. Like, what do you want to do? A shaggy-haired kid asked. I'm bored, said another one. Another, who wrinkled his nose and waved his hand through the air, said, who beefed? And then in seconds, we all bolted from the table, toppling our chairs in the escape. The attentions of 11-year-old boys are often upended by that which is either sacred or profane, either by boobs or farts or candy or cigarettes. And ultimately, few, if any, of the ideas had legs, but the short list of agreed-upon projects looked something like this. 1. Build a small unmanned rocket. We had started with some basic blueprints that involved an old water heater I salvaged from our basement, an oxygen tank my grandfather used on account of his emphysema while my grandmother's smoking. How you feeling? I'm feeling fine. Okay. A sledgehammer and a football helmet for safety. The project, though, never got off the ground, so to speak. 2. Hack into the NORAD defense system mainframe using the Commodore VIC-20. We spent hours in front of the computer, a keyboard hooked into a television set, running any numbers of commands that would, we were sure, destabilize global defense centers everywhere. We typed words like NORAD and missile and defense and top secret, and for each entry we jabbed into the keyboard, the television screen spat back its unwavering response, syntax error. 3. Build a satellite that will intercept alien communications. I remember monkeying around with a coffee can, some speakers, parts from my erector set, and some speaker wire, but the project never lived past a crude prototype. But we did intercept an all Spanish radio station, which was cool, and just a lot of dust motes. I was so taken with the club and its promising future that I bought T-shirts and had Mrs. Jensen at Keith's department store affix 3 iron-on letters, MSC, on each shirt. They're for my club, I said. We're scientists, I also said, working my bubble gum. She smiled, nodded, rang up my order, and bagged my shirts. I unwadded some bills, got my receipt, and pumped my bike home through the summer air. But nothing, not monogrammed T-shirts, not cloud-high ideas and the books that inspired them, could prolong that age and that time, and soon the inevitability of girls or other tinsel distractions had eclipsed the Mad Scientist Club, and that line between daydreaming and the actual world widened in a way that was both liberating and cruel. And then I'll just read this last bit. Children's Bible, Racine, Wisconsin, Golden Press, 1965. My family wasn't what you would call religious, but they weren't exactly irreligious either. Take, for instance, the time my parents gave me an illustrated copy of the Children's Bible. On its purchase, it became and continued to be the only Bible in our home, and I was the only one who sniffed around in its pages. Put another way, mine was a home where the expectations of the Christian faith were perfunctory at best rather than practiced. If you lived up to those expectations, great. If not, great. Even my mother's reasoning for buying it felt pro forma. Every boy has to have a children's Bible, she said. For whatever reason, I still have this book. My daughter said, Dad, do I still have to have that Jesus book in my room? I'm like, no, honey, you don't have to have the Jesus book if you don't want it. She says, it has scary pictures. I'm like, I know. I'm not a religious man, and as if fulfilling its ho-hum legacy remains the only Bible in my household, little surprised then that it wears a kicked-around look, its spine blown off, marker doodles blight the passages, and it reeks of my parents' cigarette smoke. On the inside dedication page, it reads, To Brandon, from Mom and Dad, Christmas, 1978. That is when we lived for a brief period in Richland, Washington, living out the story of boomers, job seekers, and fresh starters in an antsy post-Vietnam country. My stepdad, Bud, my mother, and I packed up our belongings and moved from Soda Springs, Idaho, and the hotel that my grandparents owned and we helped run to West Richland, a desert town made plentiful by the Columbia River and a settlement made complicated by the Hanford nuclear reactor where my dad had found work as an electrician. This was 1976, 2 years before I received the Bible. I remember bits about the move, nothing more. I recall, for instance, the sun blazing on the car hood. It was a drive from one high desert sagebrush town to another, and I remember the long, curious shadow the car threw over the basalt ridges and coulees and how it played on the brush like a movie, flickering and animated. I remember fragments from that time. On February 26, 1979, for instance, my dad said the word eclipse, as in solar eclipse, and for a moment I was frightened. The sun will disappear, he explained, behind the moon, and we'll get to see it. My mother was excited too, and between drags from her cigarette, she said that we were lucky. Once-in-a-lifetime event, she said. We turned the channel knob on our television set, and all 3 news stations were abuzz with the news of the total solar eclipse. And I remember asking if the sun would come back. My parents laughed, beer cans in hand. Nope, it's going to vanish forever. And then correcting the sarcasm, of course it will, bird turd. That was my dad's awesome name for me. Actually isn't going anywhere, just looks like it is, like an optical illusion. From Hanford, Dad brought home plates of dark glass, the kinds of glass that was used in goggles and worn by military officials who witnessed the Trinity test in 1945 in the New Mexico desert, the bomb born to the Manhattan Project born at Hanford. So there we were standing in the ankle-high yellow grass in a junk-littered field in front of our squat clapboard rental, casting our eyes on this Empyrean spectacle. Careful now, Dad says. Use the glass, don't hurt your eyes. Day had become night, and night had become day, and we stood in a shadow world beneath the eye of some god, that enormous black orb, retina flaring in the sky, and these 3 humans, mere stick figures in the vast umbra of this event, watched breathless. Dad patted me on the back. There you go, Pard. Can you see it? Pard, that's another name he gave me. I can see it, I said, craning my head toward the fiery ring, the great vanishing act above. Because it was the 1970s, my parents liked to draw the curtains and lock the door in our rental so they could listen to the swampy romp of Creedence Clearwater Revival and smoke from an enormous purple water bong without the neighbors peering in. Sometimes Dad would separate seeds and stems on white paper plates in the living room while I pushed toy trucks around on the red carpet and my mother cooked spaghetti in the small kitchen. The rules were very clear during such occasions. I was not to answer the door if someone knocked, nor could I pull back the curtain. Other times they would invite their friends over and parties would roll from the afternoon into the evening and late into the night. And in the mornings while my parents nursed their hangovers, they would within a few years sober up completely, I would put on a beige polyester suit, grab my copy of the children's Bible, and jump on a big white bus that rattled off to a Baptist church where everyone sang deep and wide, there's a fountain flowing deep and wide. When I returned in my wrinkled suit with the children's Bible, the door would be locked, so I would knock and wait on the stoop like some vagabond child missionary dispatched to convert his unknown kin. Come on, I'd whisper, answer the door already. The neighbor kids would stare at me and I would wave, and they were wondering, no doubt, why on earth I was locked out of my house again. But it would take a few minutes for Dad to stash the water bong and the paper plates and for my mother to light incense and clear the air. And then finally the door would yawn open and the light of the day would flood the darkening living room and they would be all smiles. Hey, Pard, Dad would call, glassy-eyed from the couch. How was church, kiddo? My mom would ask. And I'd shrug and run into my room and change into my play clothes. On a random day, about 8 months after the total solar eclipse, I was standing in our lawn barefoot while a desert wind tugged at my t-shirt. It was spring. I heard what I took to be a distant sonic boom. Later, strange clouds rolled overhead, and it began to snow something that wasn't snow. The snow was something else, something dry. Cars stopped. People stepped out on their porches, hands visored to their foreheads, eyes sweeping the world. My neighbor snapped her clothes off the line. What is it? People asked. It's ash, they said. Fears abounded, if only for a few minutes, of Hanford, of war, of the worst possible thing. But it wasn't that. It was the mountain-turned volcano to the north, Mount St. Helens. Within a day, our yard was a beach of gray. Dad put me to work in the yard, gathering ash into fruit jars, and my skin turned slate gray. Everything felt big to me, epic almost, and I matched the changing world I saw outside to the pictures in the children's Bible. Pictures of flaming chariots racing through the skies, of Samson breaking those pillars, of Jesus walking on water. And after studying those pictures, the notion of vanishing suns or exploding mountains began to make sense. You could expect the world to go crazy like that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brandon. Next we have Sarah Stonich, and she is the author of a new collection of interlinked short stories called Vacation Land, the novels These Granite Islands and The Ice Chorus, and the memoir Shelter. Her novel These Granite Islands was translated into 8 languages and shortlisted for France's prestigious Grand Prix de Lettres d'Elle, and both novels have been recently reissued. She is the recipient of a Minnesota State Art Book Board Fellowship and Loft McKnight's Fellowship, and residencies at Tyrone Guthrie Center in Ireland and Hawthornden International Writers Center, among others. Please help me welcome Sarah Stonich.
Hello. It's my great fortune to have been asked here today to Montana from Minnesota. I'm not exactly sure how that happened, but whoever invited me, I want to say thank you very much. And to be in such great company is a really wonderful thing for me. It's also kind of a tough act to follow Brandon here. Let alone last night, Sherman Alexie. So he was pretty funny. So I thought maybe at some point during my talk I'd try this and see what happened, if anything. Apparently nothing. Okay. I don't have a song in my book, so I can't kind of ask you to do the same thing. But yeah, Sherman was really something amazing, and I want to go to whatever coach that he goes to as far as giving a reading. I know he seems to be apparently acquainted with my yoga teacher. I'm gonna read my book of short, some of the bits from my book of short fiction, Vacation Land, which is very much about place. As Montana is a place that has very much its own personality and character, so is Minnesota. We're a very interesting state. When you think we've given you Al Frank, and I just want to remind you that because we've also given you Michelle Bachmann. And we drink a lot of beer. One of the things that we did, and this is a great beer state. We've been drinking beer since we got here. One of the things that we did for this book, to be a little bit different, instead of making a bookmark, we made beer coasters, and those are available for you out there somewhere. So that was really fun. We had for our launch, we had a polka party in a bar that looks very much probably like a lot of bars here look, in that they're paneled and they have dead animals on the walls. Minnesota is very much like that. And we had a fashion show. So we had a polka. My husband wrote a polka called Vacation Landia. And I had 7 different writers, Minnesota writers, come and read characters. As Beryl mentioned, it's connected short fiction, and each of these stories is a portrait of a character who has been to the resort Naledi Lodge in northern Minnesota. There are actually more than 7, but we chose 7 characters, and they all came to the lunch, and they read from that, and that was really fun. This book is very much about characters, and I hung it on the structure of a resort. In Minnesota, there's a ton of fishing resorts. Here, I understand that's just rivers that you go to and fly fish, and up there it's a religion, as I know fly fishing is here. But everyone is pretty much acquainted with having gone to a resort, so I thought that would be a really great structure for a book. And at first it wasn't even considered short fiction. My publisher put a novel on it before it went out, and I asked him to take that off because I wanted the readers to decide for themselves what the book is. But now that I have a little bit of a problem with a novel and short stories, until the other day when Alice Munro was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. And one of the reviews that I got in the Minneapolis Star-Trib described my work as the Alice Munro of the Frozen North, which I translate today as being that I'm next in line for a Nobel Prize myself. I'm just going to start with the very first part. And as I said, this place is very much a character in my work. When Ilsa shakes snow from her ruff, the thing leaves her jaws to skitter across the linoleum. At the sink with her back to the dog, Meg scrapes egg from a pan and wonders if she's being delivered another frozen bone. When it rolls to a stop near her slipper, she sees. There is no mistaking it, snow-crusted as it is. Real, Meg squeals, answering her own question. She vaults back, her own hand meeting her mouth as if zip-lined. Her next words gurgle into her palm, but when she swivels to where Ilsa sits, her voice is clear. Bad dog, bad dog. Pivoting to the dark window, she gasps at her reflection. On the other side of the glass, the first storm of the season has already dropped 8 inches, and it's still coming down. Meg inhales and exhales in sync with gusts of corn snow blasting the window, hoping that upon turning back, she'll see she's utterly, ridiculously mistaken. Her kitchen had once been the bar and lounge of Naledi Lodge. Besides the building, little suggests the place was ever a thriving resort. A pair of dry gas pumps lean like drunks near the dock, and pilings poke blindly through the ice as if groping for the vanished boathouse. All but 2 of the little cabins have been razed. Little Hatchet is a glacial lake shaped as you might expect, poised as if chopping down from Ontario, with the town of Hatchet Inlet stuck to its blade. Naledi sits at the northernmost point near the frozen handle. There are 2 seasons on Little Hatchet, blistering black fly summers and long winters with short days that dawn cold, colder, and, as the hand thawing on Meg's floor mutely suggests, life-threatening. Besides a boreal starkness some consider lovely, the area is unremarkable save its record temperatures. Most recently, an axle snapping -60. This is true. This is like 5 miles from where our cabin is. The actual air temperature was 60, and we don't have elevation there. The mayor went outside with a cameraman and took a banana and pounded a nail into a piece of wood with his frozen banana. True. The area is lovely. Unremarkable, save its record temperatures, most recently an axle snapping -60. This is the type of statistic that only provides fodder for our local grizzled men who boast the meek wouldn't want to inherit this bit of the earth. Fetching her Sunday paper from Pavla's diner the day before, Meg had watched the old boys mimic the latest hypothermia victim. A Chicago bond trader found on the Wickawashie portage speaking into a chunk of pine bark the size of an iPhone, as if calling for a quote. Wheezing with laughter and the gunk of Camel Straits, they put on such shows for tourists when they're in earshot, debating whether January is more dangerous than July, but usually calling a draw, for there is peril year-round here on the wrong side of the Laurentian Divide. Here, straight-line winds toss pine trunks onto sleeping campers like Scottish cabers. Flash floods dissolve trails from under hikers' knobby soles. And drownings are so routine, their mention might elicit a shrug. And since there is water everywhere, canoeists go right ahead and drink, inviting parasites to rue their days from the inside out, when even the toddlers over at the Cub Care Day Den know better, having been taught, along with the alphabet song, the rhyme about moose poop soup. Things that do not look dangerous are. Wide-eyed does nicked by cars have been known to kickbox through windshields. And while only 2 hunters have been fatally hooved, both were from Minneapolis, and perfect examples of why one might think twice before just showing up here. So that's northern Minnesota, and I go on to introduce a number of characters. Some are visitors. In fact, the book originally for each chapter had a cabin number, and it was the visitor who was coming. But then I realized that there were as many characters that were locals. So one of the things that we address in the book is the townies, the city people, the tourists versus the locals, which I imagine that you have such a dynamic here. I'm pretty sure. One of the characters that I like a lot is a teen with ADD, and she gets herself lost in a bog, and I'll read just a little bit of that. Each word makes a huff in the cold air. Words Cassie and her great-grandmother Banna set down playing Scrabble the night before. Inhaling heft, exhaling cowl. She swings her arms to stay warm. In, out, in, hasp, pucker, quiz. Each word brings Cassie another step into the bog, from hump to hump of squelchy moss. Some words are less interesting in her mouth, like jerk or pant. The sounds they make are only what they are, boring onomatopoeia. Of all the 3-letter words, she adores fez. She hops the humps, hop, keg, hop, mum, hop, sot. Hokum was laid down for a triple, but Cassie's not sure what it means, since Banna had only offered twaddle as a definition. She plans to consult the dictionary once she's back at the cabin. For now, she yells 5-letter words at a trio of black spruce. Comic, pansy, vomit. Anything goes as long as it's in the dictionary. Cassie had hooted when laying the B in front of Banna's itch to narrow the gap in their scores. Cassie's mother, Era, grinding away at some countertop, only shook her head. But Grand Karina stopped stabbing forks into their drawer long enough to sigh one of her colossal sighs, saying those two, which only made Cassie laugh louder and made Banna clack through her dentures. And those two think scouring the chrome off my taps is fun. Cassie blinks at the soggy ground ahead, wondering if she's very far off the path, and deciding, hopefully, not much, maybe. Tamarack needles stick to the wires basting her earbuds to the iPod in her hip pocket. She turns up the volume and squeals along with Joanna Newsom. She's a little thirsty herself. High above, a hawk wheels as if attached to a maypole. Cassie, as I said, she's ADD, and her parents won't allow her to be on medication. So one of the things that she does is when she's feeling stressful or things kind of pile up or back up in her head, she sort of spontaneously forms haikus. Normally she has her notebook with her, but she's lost in the bog and her notebook is far away along with her hoodie, so she's cold too. High above, a hawk wheels as if attached to a maypole. Hawk. Sounds more like something you'd cough up, Cassie decides. No name for anything so eloquently aloft. Happy with that description, Cassie blinks one eye, then the other. Her lips move soundlessly until a haiku forms and she whispers it out. Swooping for breakfast, loop and pluck and swallow whole some unlucky vole. I'm going to read you a couple more of her haikus. Her grandmother. Her family is trying to get her grandmother into a home. Hints. It's always hints. No one ever dares say anything directly to Banna. It's true she doesn't make lemonade or like small children, but she will always drag Cassie along to chase the volunteer fire truck or the ambulance to see where the accident is or what's burning. So it's not like they don't spend quality time. She'll even teach Cassie something useful now and then, like yesterday after that unsuccessful swerve when she demonstrated how to field dress a fender-dented fawn with only a Leatherman and an ice scraper. Stupid-ass Bambi, bloody fur on my bumper, pretty little lunch. Banna's own words, barely rearranged. I'll read one more. When the wolf begins to trot toward her, she rushes inward to her blank page. She has hypothermia at this point, and it's not actually a wolf. Blank page is where the lines usually emerge. Please, Cassie thinks, knowing she can't possibly get to Starbucks without one. Just one poem, please, because sometimes words come out as solutions. The scrap forms quickly, and she frowns even as she says it. Shit, he will eat me. Fangs on my white neck, red meat down his toothy hatch. A caretaker that lives at the resort for the winter. How am I doing on time? 2 minutes. Okay. True story. Listen to this. With all the freezing and thawing, we got ice build up on every eve. So I make the rounds in the afternoons, knocking ice swags off the cabins and sheds. I was on the roof of number 3, where there was a pine limb, so I crawled up to knock it off. Just when I get standing, I lose my footing. Just like that. One leg goes one way, the other goes the other way, and I twist and go down just like Chuck Berry, straight on my basket. On the peak of the roof, talk about pain. Tears like a baby, and I'm rolled up all fetal, forgetting about where I am, forget about all the ice until I start sliding, and then it's all scrabble and claw. But there's no gutters on these places, so ass over tea kettle I go, right? So he lands, and he looks up, and there's a moose. With a moose, it's all about staying out of their line of sight. They've got about the shittiest eyesight in the animal kingdom. Bad at distance and peripherals, but when they are close enough you can smell their breath, they can see just fine. So I'm screwed, tears still coming from having the boys crushed. My knee feels busted, my breath is only just coming back, and I can't move, nothing to do but wait and see how screwed. When I can breathe again, I think about yelling to scare him off, but something stops me. We stare at each other a good minute. This moose is big, like big, big, and he sidles up closer, one step, then another, until I can see the gunk in its eye. So I shrug, hold out my empty hands, and admit, you've got me, pal. But nothing happens. When I try to move my legs, the moose moves his. I'm free, you're not, ha. You ever see a tree with a burl in the middle of the trunk? That's exactly what a moose's knee looks like. Bigger than the Brunswick Pro Katie gave me for my 30th. The moose blinks, steps sideways, then back. Shit, I say, I wish I was you. Moose don't pay hundreds of dollars for tests to see if his splooge is up to snuff, do they? Isn't that right, moose? And I bet you don't spend thousands to have the doctor, not you, but the doctor, try to get it in there and send her just so into your wife where it will take. No, I didn't think so. And you don't have to take on extra work and cover all the extra medical and live out here in the middle of bumfuck. I swear he shakes his head at that one. Oh, right, I say, you like living out here. Actually, this place isn't so bad, is it, Moose? And I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. Next we have Russell Rowland, who was born in Bozeman, Montana in 1957. His first novel, In Open Spaces, made the San Francisco Chronicle bestseller list and was named among the Best of the West 2002 by the Salt Lake City Tribune. It received a star review in Publishers Weekly. Rowland's second novel, The Watershed Years, also garnered rave reviews and was a finalist for the High Plains Book Award for Fiction. His latest novel is High and Inside, and is the story of a former Red Sox pitcher who moved to Bozeman, Montana, to try and rebuild a shattered life. Rowland lives in his hometown of Billings, where he teaches at MSU Billings and offers private editing consultation. He is taught at Boston University and was a writer in residence at St. Mary's College. I'm pleased to introduce Russell Rowland.
Thank you. It's really nice to be here. I was thinking this morning about how, I've been to this festival a few times, and you would think that maybe it would start to get a little boring, but I'm actually more honored to be part of it than ever this year. Last night was just an incredible experience, and I was thinking about how not only was Mr. Alexei hilarious, but he just got me thinking about stuff, in a different way. There was so much pain and anger behind the humor that, and I love being part of a gathering where the status quo gets challenged. Especially since I live in Billings. That never happens in Billings. So how many of you are familiar with Shakes the Clown? Movie from the 80s, 90s maybe? The promo for that movie called it the Citizen Kane of alcoholic clown movies. And so I've decided this is the Great Gatsby of alcoholic Red Sox pitcher who moves to Bozeman, Montana with his three-legged dog novels. Pete Hurley was a member of the 2004 Red Sox when they won the World Series. He's not real, but that's what I decided. And he's a relief pitcher. So he's kind of in the background. He's not a star, and he kind of likes it that way. And, he's got his ring, he makes good money, and he gets to drink with his buddies. And then this happens. The chapters in this novel, I'll start with a little excerpt from media. Pete Hurley has become the Robert Downey Jr. of Major League Baseball. You want him in your movie, but you don't want him at the cast party. My best game for the Boston Red Sox came during the 2005 season in Fenway Park. The scheduled starter came down with a sore elbow during warm-ups, and Terry Francona pulled me aside 20 minutes before the national anthem. For 7 years before that, I'd been a steady presence in the bullpen with occasional spot starts. Even in those starts, I was merely consistent. I had an average fastball, a good curve, but the pitch I was known for was my changeup. That night, I fell into a rhythm. The best part was that we were playing the Yankees. Bernie Williams got a leadoff double in the fourth, but his teammates left him stranded on second. In the seventh, with 2 outs, Jorge Posada hit a long liner that probably would have been a home run in any other park. But the Green Monster knocked it down, holding him to a single. Those were the only 2 hits I gave up in the game. Johnny Damon, still a Red Sox, tracked down a fly to dead center at the warning track. And Kevin Millar dove to spear a line drive down the first baseline that would have been a sure double. The only blip in my early innings was when I hit Derek Jeter in the third. There were a few shouts from the Yankee dugout. A couple of innings later, Andy Pettitte hit Jason Varitek right in the back, and the umpire issued a warning to both teams. Varitek called a masterful game, and it seemed that wherever he positioned his mitt, whether it was on the outside black or down at the knees, the ball popped within an inch or two of the target. My curve spun like a gyroscope, and my changeup had the hitter swinging way before the ball arrived. When I strolled out to the mound for the ninth inning, the crowd gave me a standing ovation. I'd never experienced anything like it. For that moment, I felt completely adored, maybe for the only time in my life. Unfortunately, the second batter of that inning was the one I became famous for. On a 2-2 count, I decided to give my fastball a little extra, and the pitch got away from me. The ball sailed high and inside, and the crack of ball against bone lifted my balls right up into my throat. My boys. The crowd, still standing, moaned as the player crumpled. I hit him square in the eye socket. He never played again, and neither did I. So, basically, the novel, this is a flashback. The novel starts when he moves to Montana. A series of things have happened since this incident where his drinking has gotten worse and worse. He actually injures a woman that he was dating seriously in an accident that he doesn't remember because he was in blackout. So he goes back to Bozeman, or he moves to Bozeman with the idea in mind that he's going to get his life together. But of course his drinking immediately gets him into trouble again. I'm going to read a little bit. One of the things that happens is he actually gets confronted by his neighbor. She does a little intervention on him, and it turns out that she's got some ulterior motives for her concern. But anyway, she steals his dog from him one day, and she tells him that the only way he can have the dog back is if he promises not to drink for 30 days. And she does give him the dog back, and of course he immediately drinks and immediately feels like shit. But this next scene takes place soon after that. He wakes up one morning after a real roaring bender, and his dog is gone. So of course he assumes that she's taken it again. When I realized Dave is gone, Dave is his dog, I leap from my bed, pull on my clothes, down a massive glass of apple juice, and run to my truck. The Monday house is not all that far from my own as the crow flies, but the road is a winding gravel snake. I'm all over the road and off it, into the ditch and out again. The tires spit gravel in every direction, showering my pickup's underbelly. By the time I swing into the Monday driveway, my jaw is clenched so tightly that my teeth hurt. I hit the ground stalking, arms bent at my sides. I pound on the front door. After several long minutes and repeated knocking, Arlene answers. She's the sister of the woman that confronted him. She was obviously sleeping and is surprised to see me. I study her and decide she has no idea why I'm here. Morning, Pete. She blinks. I see that my expression scares her, and as always, this bothers me. You're up early. What time is it? It takes everything I have to be civil. I concentrate on softening my gaze, taking a deep breath in through my nose. Sorry to bother you, Arlene, but is your sister here? Her jaw freezes, open an inch for a silent moment. Yeah, but I'm pretty sure she's still asleep. She pauses, clearly waiting for me to offer to come back later. Finally, she opens the door. Come on in. I'm tempted to stay outside, to walk around and burn up some angry energy, but I step inside, fists deep in my pockets. Leslie appears some minutes later, rumpled, puffy-eyed. She's also surprised to see me. Arlene follows her, stops, and leans against the wall. Something wrong? Leslie asks. Where's Dave? Dave? Leslie gives a small shrug, then looks at Arlene. And Leslie is either a brilliant actress or she really doesn't know. She's gone? You don't know? Why would I? I start to answer this question, but I stop myself, really realizing that I'm just about to reveal that I got drunk. Where is she? Honestly, Pete, I have no idea. Her expression is one of concern, with no hint of either guilt or triumph. Why would Leslie know where she is? Arlene asks. Her question is greeted with a brief silence, during which Leslie and I share an acknowledging glance. What's going on? Arlene asks. I'm going to the cops, I announce, and I slam the door behind me. So later, after Dave's been gone for quite a while now, and Pete gets a call that somebody has spotted her up in this mountain trail. So he goes up there to try to find her, and he ends up having a seizure. This happens right after that. The doctor didn't even have to consult the tests to figure out what happened. That first morning, after I'd choked down a couple of pieces of toast, she stood over my bed, looking over the top of half-lens glasses. You suffered a seizure, she said, her look slightly disapproving. A seizure? I've never had any kind of seizure before. What kind of seizure? Withdrawals, alcohol withdrawals. But I've hardly had anything to drink for days. She studied me as if she wasn't sure I was worthy of this discussion. That would fit very nicely into the definition of withdrawals, wouldn't it? How much do you normally drink, Mr. Hurley? Not that much. Not lately, anyway. Okay, now we're getting somewhere, she says. How about before? I don't know why I answered her honestly. I've never done it before with anyone, and I'm still shocked at what came out of my mouth. It was surprising not just because I admitted it to someone I barely knew, but it was as if I had been keeping the information a secret from myself, as if I'd been drinking behind my own back, hiding bottles from myself. I told her that I drink every day. I told her that on the days I don't drink, I want to drink so bad that it's sometimes the only thing I can think about. I told her that before I moved to Bozeman, I sometimes lost track of time. I would lose a few hours here and there. I told her that I once forgot where I was or what I'd been doing for 3 straight days. 3 days? I verified this with my silent shame, staring at my feet, which were the only exposed part of my body. They seemed far away, like another set of feet, a spare set. Mr. Hurley, I'm going to give it to you straight, because in my experience, it's the best way with people like you. Your liver's in bad shape. You might be able to drink for another 20 years and still not feel the effects. On the other hand, she tilted her head. She had metallic hair, light copper with streaks of silver. It's impossible to guess, but in some cases, the alcohol works very quickly. But think about this. Things like this don't happen to people who drink socially, Mr. Hurley. I took this in. Are you saying I'm an alcoholic? I'm not going to say that. But for a man your age, an athlete, your liver is way too big. That indicates something. Do you know Leslie Monday? I asked her. Okay. Just one last little bit here. What Pete finally does after he's had this little bit of a revelation is he decides to go back to Massachusetts and finally meet up with the woman that he injured to try to make some peace there. So this is a scene that happens. He shows up at their house, and the brother, the woman's brother, answers the door, and he's not pleased to see him, but he says, why don't you come back tomorrow? This is right after that. And this is the excerpt from. The trouble with being labeled as troubled is that it ends up being the only thing that interests anybody. You start to believe it. That's from an interview with Bryant Gumbel. Driving away from the Watsons past my old house, I'm surprised how emotional I am. Oh, I forgot to mention too, he's tried to stop in the time before he makes this visit, but it's only been a few weeks, so he's very, very shaky. Driving away from the Watsons past my old house, I'm surprised how emotional I am. At the moment, when I think of what I think of as a dark, isolated bar in an unfamiliar section of town, I could avert this temptation. I could call Leslie as she asked, or Danielle, or Barry. I drive through the town where I grew up, away from all the places I know. I avoid all landmarks. I avoid the house where my mother died, all the buildings where I ever worked or lived. I avoid every baseball field I ever played on. I avoid all reminders of Simone, of all the Watsons, anything that will make me think of Dave. I check into my hotel room and the clerk says, "Hey, you're him." I don't respond, but he is compelled to add, "Man, that was really fucked up what happened to that girl." I don't make it to my room. Instead, I find a nondescript brown tavern with cheap siding and a hand-painted sign, Vins. An uneven string of Christmas lights circles the name. When I walk inside, I know I've found just what I'm looking for. The floor is stained. The pool table lists to one side where one leg is completely broken off. Most of the plastic seat covers are split. I slink inconspicuously into a corner where I'm approached by a bleached, blue-eyeshadowed barmaid. "Can you sell me a bottle?" "Why not?" "I was hoping you'd say that." "What do you want?" "Whiskey." She brings me a fifth of rot gut and a water glass. They don't fuck around at Vin's. I fill it and I drain half the glass in my first drink. I close my eyes, and as the burn passes down my throat into my belly, I wait for that warm euphoria to travel into my head. But it doesn't. I don't feel anything. I open my eyes. I hold up my glass toward the single bulb that dangles from the ceiling. The liquid looks to be the right color, the right consistency for whiskey. I see that alcoholic swirl snaking through it. I drink again, emptying the glass, and I wait again, knowing that tolerance can vary. Surely 10 ounces is enough to get some kind of a kick, but no, I feel nothing. I motion for the barmaid. "Yes." "You guys don't happen to water down your booze, do you?" She looks at me as if she's going to slap me. "Did you break the seal on that bottle or not?" "I'm sorry. I'm sorry." She turns, expressing her disapproval with the swivel of her hips. After downing 2 more tumblers, I still feel nothing, and I leave, bottle tucked under my arm. The barmaid doesn't acknowledge my thanks. In the parking lot, I drink straight from the bottle until it's almost half gone. And when I still feel nothing aside from the acidic fire in my throat, I begin to panic. I've read somewhere that this can happen, that it's possible for a person's tolerance to reach a level where the alcohol simply doesn't work. I thought this was a myth. Just one more theory cooked up by alcohol counselors to scare the shit out of people like me. But this isn't right. It drains several more fingers from the bottle. This time I begin to feel ill, but there's still nothing happening. I glare at the bottle as if I can somehow scare the whiskey into doing its job. "Please," I say quietly, talking to the bottle like an old lover. I drink again, and when this mouthful comes right back up, I throw the door open just before my stomach empties onto the asphalt. The surge throws me to the ground, and there on my knees, in the parking lot of an anonymous bar in Amherst, Massachusetts, I am overcome with a feeling of panic, a fear I've never experienced before. I've always known what to expect. Alcohol's been reliable that way. I'm terrified by the thought that it might not work anymore. I sink to my elbows, resting my head against my forearm, and I cry like a baby. Thank you.
Thank you, Russell. And thank you, Brandon and Sarah, too.